Game number 2 of the World Chess Championship 2018, and for the first time in the match, Magnus Carlsen, the world champion with the white pieces, against challenger Fabiano Caruana. Let's get into it. I was curious to see how the players would react to the marathon game in game 1, over 7 hours, over 100 moves played. Would they be tired? Would it be a quick draw? Or would Carlsen try to put his opponent under pressure once more and get that first win? Let's find out together. Carlsen started with 1d4 and knight f6. We see the orthodox queen's gambit here after knight c3. Now Caruana played bishop to e7. In fact, black has a huge array of possibilities here, ranging from the scimitar with c5 over to the Vienna variation with d takes c4, or play c6 here, play a6 here, play the Ragozin variation, bishop b4, knight bd7. A lot of these moves also Carlsen has played himself to black pieces. Both players are quite familiar with this position, and Caruana chooses one of the most solid lines here, bishop to e7. Now white has a choice between bishop f4 and bishop to g5, and Carlsen goes for the former. Castle, e3, c5, this is a well-known theoretical line. Queen to c2, knight c6, black is developing and so is white. a3 to expand on the queen side, and black is stopping that by going queen to a5. This first looks counterintuitive because you might say it runs into the fork here, but black could just take this since there's a pin on the a file. For that reason, the rook moves out of the a file to d1 and also putting more pressure on the pawn on d5. And this was the first critical moment in the game. There are two main moves here, which are bishop e7. This is clearly the main move, I should say. And then also recently once again has become fashionable, rook to e8. But Caruana chose neither. He played rook to d8, and you could visibly see during the game that Carlsen was slightly shocked. When he was asked in a press conference what he was thinking when Caruana played this move, he said very frankly, "Oh shit, I did not expect that," and this is not a pleasant situation to be in, obviously, to be right in your opponent's opening preparation. So Carlsen, did a very practical thing here. He played bishop e2 and not going for the most critical move, which is knight to d2. So Carlsen played bishop e2 to avoid any future opening prep here in this game and just reduce any possible damage. Knight d2 must be the critical move, as also Caruana revealed in the press conference, but this is no surprise to anybody with a computer, and also it is the most played move in this position. And here the most played line is d takes c4, but I think if Carlsen had been sure that this would happen, he would have surely gone for this, because here we enter an endgame where only white can be better. White is not risking anything, and this would be a position that suits Carlsen quite well. So I think this was not Caruana's plan, or at least I would be surprised. I think he wanted to go for something more double-edged. While maybe not objectively sound, this is quite interesting to play, especially if you are all loaded up with preparation and you know your opponent is not. d4 is an interesting move, also tried in correspondence chess already. It involves a piece sacrifice here, as knight a4 is attacking both queen and bishop, but black sacrificed the piece on b4 and certainly has good compensation here, brings the queen back to a5, allowing knight to b4, and this is a tricky position definitely to navigate, especially if you don't know anything about it, and Carlsen did not want to allow something like this. So I think it was a good practical choice to go bishop e2 and not play for an opening advantage here and see what Caruana's team had cooked up. Knight e4, castle, knight takes c3, b takes c3. Now there's the threat of knight to g5, which could be a bit unpleasant, so black goes h6, also making some space for the king later on. Now this pawn on a3 is hanging, so just in case, white plays it to a4, sensible move. And here black played knight to e7, this makes a lot of sense. So black can take on d5 with the knight. And here black has just comfortably equalized, you could say. White played knight to e5. And here Caruana responded with bishop d6. Also possible and good would be f6, knight to g6 and e5, pushing back the white pieces, and now developing the last minor piece, and black has an harmonious setup and is just fine here. I would probably prefer black here already, even though it is still equal. Bishop d6 by Caruana was also a good move. Now Carlsen took on d5 and played bishop f3. And in fact, this is the last really interesting moment in this game. Here, white had the chance of sacrificing a piece with knight takes f7, and Carlsen considered this move, as he said in the press conference, but he also rightly judged that it's not offering him much chances, and I believe if it is offering any chances, then it's for black. Because after king takes f7, bishop takes d6, rook takes d6, bishop h5 check, the king steps back to g8 to not allow queen h7. And here white can regain the piece with c4 or e4. I hope you didn't hear the sirens too loud in the background. Some emergency cars passing by. So white could regain the piece, but it's not really offering any advantage. e4 could be just answered by bishop d7, and then black takes back here, and black is fine. The black king is a little bit weaker, that is true, but on the other hand, white also has his own share of weaknesses on the queen side, and those factors balance each other out. It should be just balanced. c4 is also a possible move, but here black already has different options available, such as also just giving the piece back, but also hanging on to the piece with a move like rook c6 or queen c7. And you don't want to be in a situation like this where you have to suddenly prove that you have enough compensation for the piece. The computer does it quite easily, but for a human to just go down a piece in the most important match of the year, it's a different story. So understandably, Carlsen did not go for something like this, even though it does work and it is equal. You would need to play a move like g4 here, though. But, well, obviously, you don't do something like this in such an important match. So, sensible decision by Carlsen to play bishop f3 here. Now, the bishops came off and we have a lot of trades. Black also took on e5, the rooks come off, and now we have this position, which is almost completely symmetrical. The only difference is that white has a slightly worse pawn structure on the queen side, as his pawns are isolated. That means they cannot protect each other and they're more vulnerable. On the other hand, white is a little bit ahead in development, and there are not a lot of pieces left on the board, as you can see, just queen, bishop and rook. So that means we're pretty much heading to a draw. If anybody has to be careful though, it is white. Rook to b1, rook b8, now queen to d3, bishop d7, and here probably the simplest solution would have been to go queen d6 right away. But after a5, you cannot really say that Carlsen had any problems, so I can't really criticize this move too much. Obviously, black cannot take any of the pawns because his bishop would be hanging, so Caruana played bishop c6, now queen d6, going for the rook endgame, allowing further weakenings of the pawn structure, but rook endgames, as we already found out in the last game, have a huge drawing tendency, and here Carlsen evaluated correctly that this rook endgame does not trouble him too much to lead to a draw. King of 8, the king approaches, white pushes forward the pawns to trade all the pawns on the queen side, and that's what he achieves right here. a7, rook takes b6, rook takes a7. This pawn is still on the board but will be gone pretty soon. White cannot hold into it, but this position with 3 against 4 is a fairly easy draw, so Carlsen was not too afraid to go for this. e5, rook b4. With this move, white wants to trade further pawns, and with each pawn trade, obviously, white is getting closer to the draw, because one pawn and rooks on the board is not too exciting if the king is just in front of it. Caruana played f5, rook back to b6, and now Carlsen just gave the pawn up. Check, and chasing the king or the pawns. And here probably Caruana could have continued the game a little bit longer with rook e7. I'm pretty certain that Carlsen would have played this move himself with black for another 50 moves maybe, as he did yesterday. And as he also said in a press conference that he's going to try everything he can and press water out of a stone. I believe that was the phrase he used. Caruana was not in the mood for that. He played on for a little bit, but he didn't really try for too long, and it is just a draw, and white doesn't have to be very, very careful, and Carlsen achieved it with comfortable ease here, I would say. In this position, the players agreed to a draw. So the second game was less exciting than the first one. Both players also had to recover, and obviously this was mostly due to a good opening preparation by Fabiano, surprising Carlsen with this move 10 rook to d8, and then Carlsen didn't want to find out, and I think this is the right practical decision, what exactly Caruana's team had cooked up for him in the critical move knight to d2. So Carlsen played normal development moves, but then didn't have any advantage, and only Caruana could press a little bit, but couldn't really pose huge problems for Carlsen, and the natural outcome was a draw. So tomorrow on Sunday we have a rest day, and the third game will be on Monday, once again with Caruana with the white pieces. Until then, let me know if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed this game analysis, and if you would like to be notified, then please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.